will not be tested on that. But there it is, just for you to look at. Paul's letters to the Corinthians. There was a letter before 1 Corinthians. That's very clear. That letter is lost. They didn't understand it. Maybe that's why the letter was lost. I don't know. Just guessing. 1 Corinthians. Most people think there was a letter between 1st and 2nd Corinthians. But some people think it is 1 Corinthians. The majority think there's another letter lost. I kind of incline towards it being 1 Corinthians, but I hold the minority opinion. And then 2 Corinthians. When we look at the letter, there's reports that reached Paul. So people visited Paul, right? Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus. We read that in chapter 16. And they told Paul, but then, and Chloe's people as well. Chapter 1, verse 11, they told him about divisions in the church, right? So they came to visit Paul, and they said there's divisions in the church. Chapter 5, verse 1, they told Paul about a case of incest in the church. Again, in chapter 11, about divisions. They told him about some not believing in the resurrection in chapter 15. Apparently, probably the Corinthians wrote, none of this is absolutely certain, but probably the Corinthians wrote a letter to Paul with questions, and they had questions about marriage and sexuality. They had questions about those who were engaged, 7:1, 7:25. They had questions concerning food offered to idols, questions about spiritual gifts, the collection for the saints. Probably not a question about Apollos. So a lot of people have said that what you see, it doesn't matter. I didn't mean to put it in this box, but it doesn't matter. That you see in the Corinthian church compromise and conflict. Right? Compromise and conflict. Oh, right, compromise again. I lost it in that little box there. So that's what Paul's dealing with. If we look at the structure of the letter, it's really nice. Some letters are hard structure, but here's the introduction. Very typical Pauline pattern, right? A greeting, thanksgiving. Then this is my root problem, arrogance. Pride, I think, is their root problem. But here, we have the chapter 1:10 through 4:21. I mean, basically everyone agrees and knows 1:10 to 4:21 is about the divisions in the church, right? Then problems of church purity, arrogance, again, that's my heading, but everybody agrees, in chapter 5 you have a church discipline case, a case of incest. Then chapter 6, 1 through 11, lawsuits. Yeah, Paul's nicely going from subject to subject, right? Pretty organized, pretty structured. A problem with sexual immorality. Then, starting in chapter 7, he especially responds to questions. I mean, again, that's my heading. Theology of cross, applied to contemporary issues in the church. But some of the issues we've already seen. The first 24 verses, purity and marriage. And then purity and virgins, or what do you do if you're engaged to someone? And then 3 chapters on food offered to idols. Bad chapter division there, 11:1. Usually the chapter divisions are pretty good, right? But here, it bleeds over in chapter 11. Then we have order and worship. What do you do when you gather together? How should the women adorn themselves? 11:2 through 16. Paul's upset about what's happening at the Lord's Supper. Then we have a long discussion on spiritual gifts. And then the resurrection. And then, then we have the conclusion. So, a lot of different topics addressed in these letters. So we're gonna spend the rest of today, and then Thursday and Tuesday on 1 Corinthians. So we'll just do what we can, and kind So, here's our introduction. Paul, so I want to pick out what's interesting, or everything's interesting, but what's distinctive. He emphasizes, I think here, he emphasizes you're not the only believers in the world. Right? They're proud. So he says, look, you're sanctified. Amazingly enough, he says you're sanctified, you're saints, but you're not the only one. He doesn't usually say this in letters. There's other believers too. He just wants to remind them, don't think you're the only Christians in the world. Don't remember there's believers all over. So that's interesting to see. Then in the Thanksgiving, and again, I'll just have you read that, but in the Thanksgiving he emphasizes it's all God's grace. You are what you are because of God's grace. You were enriched in Him. So forth and so on. But it is kind of interesting, isn't it? That he's thankful for a church with so many problems. I always think that's interesting. Pastorally. There are people getting drunk at the Lord's Supper. I don't think I'd have a Thanksgiving section. You? Being kicked off at this church. There's incest going on in the church. Sexual sin. And yet Paul's thankful. Paul sees signs of God's grace in the church with all of the problems. And he doesn't minimize the problem. So I just think that's fascinating. That Paul can still be thankful. I think I might have just been depressed, But he sees some good things happening. Okay. Now, we come to a big part of the letter. 1:10 through 4:21, divisions in the church. Right? So, Paul says, look, I hear there's divisions. I don't want there, he says, there should be no divisions. You should be united. Look, I've heard that there's rivalry from Chloe. So, what is this about? They're choosing sides, right? I belong to Paul. I belong to Apollos. I belong to Cephas. The last one, I belong to Christ, is very disputed. I've written a little commentary on 1 Corinthians. I actually argue that that's not a separate party, but we're going fast. We're not going to worry about that. Okay? I don't have time to get into that. What's clear is some are saying, I identify with Paul as a Christian, some Apollos, some Cephas, who is Peter. And what's going on here? Paul doesn't like it, right? He says, was Paul crucified for you? Did I die for you on the cross? Were you baptized in my name? Obviously not. And then very interesting, right? Just a quick little look here. I thank God that I baptized none of you except Crispus and Gaius, so that no one can say you were baptized in my name. I wasn't there to make converts to my cause. But then he says, I did in fact baptize, maybe as he's writing, yeah, that's right, I did baptize the household of Stephanas. Stephanas is with him. Maybe Stephanas said, remember you baptized me. I forgot about that. And then he says, maybe it's all expired, right? But maybe I baptized a few others. Can't remember. But we got the point. Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel. So I think this verse is helpful. Baptism is a requirement to enter the people of God, but it doesn't save you in and of itself. Baptism is subordinated to the gospel, isn't it? Baptism is important, but it must be interpreted in light of the gospel. So some Church of Christ people make this mistake, don't they? They flip baptism over the gospel, but the baptism must also always be interpreted in light of the gospel. The gospel's fundamental. That's why we don't say, everyone should be baptized, but we don't say if someone wasn't baptized, they're going to hell. We don't say that, do we? But now, to preach the gospel, but not with eloquent wisdom. so that the cross of Christ will not be emptied of its effect. Now, I'm reading ahead, but I think Paul's giving us a hint. What are these divisions over? These divisions, a lot of people have written about this, by the way. These divisions are over the rhetoric, the speaking ability of Paul, Apollos, and probably Peter. Now, it was very common in the Greco-Roman world. Those people, no TV, right? No movies. It was very common for people to come, traveling itinerant speakers in the Greco-Roman world, to come to cities and give speeches. And there was and they had rhetorical patterns that followed in these speeches. And people were praised, and then they could move crowds with their rhetorical skills. So it was a very, very common practice. And, you can read about it. There's rhetorical handbooks by Quintilian. You can still read it today, and others. So a very common practice. And Paul says, that's my focus when I'm speaking, is not to speak in such a way that you're impressed with me. So it seems as if they're arguing, look, I'm with Apollos over against Paul because Apollos is a better speaker. And therefore he must be more godly, more spiritual. Those of us who are with Apollos, we're a little bit a cut above those who are with Apollos, right? Paul showed us how to get saved with Apollos. That's deep stuff, We're with him. Paul says, watch out, because the cross can be canceled. So he brings up the cross. So isn't this interesting? Here I want us to think pastorally. So there's divisions in the church because people are choosing sides over the speaking ability of pastors, right? How about you? I'm with MacArthur. Piper, Keller, whatever, right? Whatever game you want to play. So Paul says, you don't understand the theology of the cross. Isn't that interesting? I think, what would I say in my superficiality? I'd say, stop it. Just stop it. Don't do that. Right? But that's not very helpful, is it? Just to say, stop it. Paul says, you don't understand the cross. You don't understand the gospel. I love how Paul takes everything back to the gospel. There's divisions in the church. You don't really understand the profundity of the gospel. The message of the cross, think about the message of the cross, he says. It's foolishness to those who are perishing. But it is the power of God to those who are being saved. For it is written, I'll destroy the wisdom of the wise. I will set aside the intelligence of the intelligent. Where is the one who is wise? Is Paul against wisdom, human wisdom? No. He's not against it. Where's the teacher of the law? Where's the debater of this age? Hasn't God made the world's wisdom foolish? Paul's point isn't, like some fundamentalists have argued, don't study, don't think, right? That's not Paul's point. Paul's point is, the avenue by which we can come to know God is not the human intellect. Fundamentally. It is not the case that the brightest and the best show us through their intellectual virtues, right? Their intellectual brilliance. It's not that they show us the way to go. That's not the case. Hasn't God made the world's wisdom foolish? Is it the case that the most intelligent are an elite class that it can explain to us fundamental reality? And the answer is no. Because in God's wisdom, the world did not know God through wisdom. God was pleased to save those who believe through the foolishness of what is preached. God has set it up in such a way that the intellectuals, nothing against intellect, right? Nothing against thinking well, But the intellectuals aren't the pathway to understanding, because if they were, they'd take pride in their ability. And so God has chosen to save through the foolishness, the so-called foolishness, it's really not foolishness, right, of the gospel. For Jews ask for spectacular signs, and Greeks seek wisdom, especially in rhetoric, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. But those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ is the power of God and wisdom of God, right? So, the message seems foolish to the world, but it's the way God saves people. You know, we're used to this, right? But imagine you come to a Greco-Roman city who've never heard the gospel, and you say, here's how the world is saved. A man in a country maybe you've never heard of, from people you've never heard of, was crucified on the cross and raised from the dead for your sins, and that's how you're saved. Of course, you're going to say more, but like, what? That's crazy. You guys are nuts. So, but that's the message, right? What is Paul saying to the Corinthians? Haven't you forgotten that? No, he's not writing unbelievers, right? He's writing to believers. Have you forgotten that? Have you forgotten the way you got in? You have. You've forgotten. You've forgotten that the very message we preach doesn't cause us to boast in ourselves. Let me remind you of the very basis of your salvation, he said. And our next paragraph will do Thursday, right? We'll talk about it then. So chapter 2, he says, so when I came to you, I didn't come with brilliance of speech or wisdom. I didn't come with fancy Greek rhetoric. I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified, because I didn't want you to trust what I do, but in the cross. Now, let me say something here that's really important. I don't think Paul's saying, one thing I decided to do, I decided to try to be as boring as I possibly can be, right? So the one thing I labor to do when I speak is to be dull. I don't think that's what Paul's saying. But I do think he's saying, be careful. I mean, it's a line, isn't it? Be careful that it depends. This is more of a problem if you're a gifted speaker. You know, if you're not a gifted speaker, you don't even have to really worry about it. If you're a gifted speaker, be careful that you don't speak in such a way, if you're gifted, and I think Paul was gifted, and Apollos, that the focus gets on you instead of the message. And I think gifted speakers, I think, know that, sense that, who know God. Sometimes one can cross the line, right? But what is the attention on? How wonderful the talk was. I mean, it can be wonderful, so it's not easy always to discern. But is the focus on God and Christ and the gospel, ultimately? It's a discernment issue, isn't it, ultimately? Years ago, and I mean years ago, Diane and I worked with youth, and we had a great youth group. We really did. We had a great core that really loved the Lord. But we had a group in the youth group, typical that, I don't know if they were saved, probably some of them weren't. It was hard to tell, not very interested in spiritual things. A speaker was brought into our church, and he was amazing. He was a great speaker. Every one of the kids turned around. But the message was pretty superficial, honestly. I don't even remember what he said to me. But he was exciting. And he was good. And every one of the kids turned around for a month. After a month, they all kind of returned to what they were before. I think that's what Paul's talking about. That kind of flash, there was flash, and there was excitement, and he was hilarious, and none of that's bad in and of itself. But what was his message finally? I remember sitting there, and of course I don't remember specifics, but I thought as I sat there, is there really a gospel in this? And I don't think there really was, and I think the effect showed it. It just kind of an emotional response that you can get from a crowd, but it was temporary. And I think that's what Paul has in mind. Paul's saying, I don't want to speak in such a way that I just move people, but I don't move them with the gospel, ultimately. So what's he saying to the Corinthians? You're falling into that by talking about how good speakers are. You're becoming absolutely secular. You're forgetting what this is all about. This isn't about us. So this is really interesting, right? No problem with Paul, Apollos, and Peter. It's all their fault. That is the Corinthians, right? Paul, Apollos, and Peter, they're all on the same team. He's not criticizing any of them. Paul, Apollos, and Peter have done nothing wrong. This is all coming from the Corinthians. Here's a proof of it. 1 Corinthians 16:12. One of my favorite verses. What does Paul say at the end of the letter? I told Apollos, you really ought to go visit the Corinthians. And Apollos goes, no, I don't want to. I like that verse for two reasons. One, if Apollos was the problem, Paul wouldn't say you should really go for a visit. Why don't you go for a visit and mess them all up again? He wouldn't say that, would he? Now, they're on the same team. The second thing is that what I really like about this verse, Paul was not a dictator. He said to Apollos, I really think you should go. Apollos said, I don't think so. And Paul said, okay. God's leading you. I trust that. He didn't force himself on it, did he? He didn't say, look, I'm the Apostle Paul. You get over there now. He just said, okay, go. It'd be great if you'd go sometime. So I think that's instructive for us as well. So, I'm always flying, sorry. But I want to do these verses. He's been talking about the foolishness of the message, but then he says, actually our message is wise. Our message isn't foolish, it's wise. But only the mature recognize that. Because our wisdom is it's hidden. It's a mystery. A mystery is something hidden, right? A mystery isn't something that's necessarily hard to understand biblically. I'm not talking theologically. There's theological discourse, and there's Bible, right? No longer discussion. I don't have time. But this is a wisdom God predestined before the ages. The rulers of the age, they didn't get it because they crucified Jesus. They didn't see Jesus as the wisdom of God. But what no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no human heart has conceived, God has prepared these things for those who love Him. Now, God has revealed these things to us by the Spirit. We are wise. If you're a Christian, you're wise. What is He saying here? Why? Because God revealed it to you. How did He reveal it to you? Not because you're so brave, but by the Spirit. The Spirit searches out everything. Great. These are great verses on the deity of the Spirit. Even the depths of God. Only a person can search out the depths of God, right? Or who knows a person's thoughts except his spirit within him, right? If we pointed out someone in the room, we won't. We'll just say, hey, I wonder what that person's thinking right now. We all stared at him, right? Well, we could guess. But if they didn't tell us, we could guess. But maybe they're thinking, I don't care. Maybe they're thinking, why did you do that? But we don't know until they tell us, right? Who knows? Who knows what you're thinking right now? Maybe none of you are thinking about this class. But who knows what you're thinking? How much more is that true of God? If we don't know what human beings are thinking, who knows what God's thinking? Well, what does Paul tell us? The Spirit tells us. How do we know God? Because He's revealed Himself to us through the Holy Spirit. So we have wisdom. The natural person doesn't, right? We have wisdom because it's revealed. My sister said to me once, it was kind of a nominal Catholic, well, I have 4 sisters, but my oldest sister said to me, you know, she goes to Catholic church, sort of, but she goes, you know, my priest said that we're all sort of like, with God, we're all sort of blind, feeling around the elephant. You've heard that. I said, you're not even the teaching of the Catholic Church. You know? So we believe God has revealed himself to us in the Bible. We're not blind. That's a totally secular understanding. Not that we know everything exhaustively, of course. God hasn't told us everything about everything, but he's told us everything we need to know to be saved and sanctified. And why do we know it? We're not proud, right? So what's Paul saying to the Corinthians? Our message is foolish to the world. We know the truth, not because we're so smart. We're not smart. We're fools. But God revealed it to us. So there's no reason to boast. And that's what he's after in these chapters. We'll continue this. I meant to finish chapter 4 today, so I just get behind so easily. But his point is God has revealed these things to us. He wants to keep them from being proud. Okay. See you Thursday, Lord willing.